Well, welcome to our session on the future of XR headsets and how they'll deliver our spatial future. My name is Tim Bajarin. I'm chairman of Creative Strategies. We're one of the oldest high-tech research firms in Silicon Valley. I've been doing this since 1981, and I've seen pretty much everything. I was at the birth of the beginning of the PC. I worked with IBM on the original IBM PC project. When Apple introduced the Mac, I worked on their DTP strategy. And I've been involved with technology for basically with every one of the major companies as they grew the industry over the last 40 years. In 1994, I got my first introduction to VR by Jared Lanier. And I was still relatively young in 94. And it was very impactful. When he showed us what he was doing, it was like the future. I mean, it was, even in 94, it wasn't, what he showed was a little bit crude, but you could see where things were going. Here we are, 20, 30 years forward, and we're now living in a world where XR has the potential of being realistically important, and more importantly, driving the next generation of what's going to happen, I think, in our world. And we are rapidly moving towards a virtual world where especially enterprises are going to have a major role in flushing it out. So I have some significant questions I want to ask each of you guys. And what I'm going to actually start with is each of you clarifying a little bit about who you are and what you do at your companies. And then I have some questions directed to each of you. So I'll start with you. Anna?
Thank you, Tim. And great to be here. I hope you've had a great evening in the party. I heard somebody might be still recovering from that. Great to see all of you here today with us. I am head of design and research, so heading our team of industrial designers, UX researchers, who are creating our mixed reality products at Vario.
Okay, very good. Saeed?
And good morning, everybody. My name is Saeed Bakadir. I lead the XR business and product at Qualcomm. Obviously, I think we started at Qualcomm very, very early stage on XR, even more than 15 years ago. But really for a standalone, and what we got into is about maybe 10 years ago from the Oculus Go and where we are now. So very excited to be here all with my panelists here, and look for a good discussion.
And my name is Jason McGuigan. I am the head of virtual reality at Lenovo, primarily focusing on our direction and strategy in the XR space, definitely centered around the enterprise. So we work very well with our partners in the industry, Qualcomm as well as Vario. We straddle a lot of these areas across all-in-one devices as well as PC-connected devices, and really drive towards business utility and customer use cases that are the focus of the commercial industry within XR.
Okay, so before we start, let me just clarify one thing. There are at least 25 headset makers already. And there were a couple that were actually even announced here in the last day or so. When I was putting this panel together, I couldn't get 25 people on stage. But these particular companies have leading positions with a lot of experience, which is why I've asked them to join this particular panel and address this question. Now, having said that, Qualcomm's chipsets have been critical from the beginning of helping so many of these VR headset makers and XR headset makers bring their products to market. They integrated them early, and more importantly, Qualcomm has continued to innovate and make them even more powerful. And so I really wanted Saeed here and Qualcomm to give us kind of a foundational understanding, not only why the chipsets are important, but how you are going to drive the future of our spatial future with XR headsets.
Yeah. No, it's really, I heard earlier as well somebody saying it's a long journey. It's not a one sprint, because XR is a complicated technology, and no matter what we think, a lot of people, when they come in, they just think this is just another consumer electronic device, so it should be just quick, get it into the machine, and you produce something that works. But this is a technology where you're bringing pixels near the eyes. It's something that you wear in your head, the most maybe valuable part of I would say, your brain and how you control your everyday life. And that makes those devices complicated, and hence their requirements are super, super high. It's unprecedented demand for compute. It's unprecedented demand for lower power. It's unprecedented demand for something that you can wear and you don't feel it, it's there. So every challenge that we dealt with in the consumer electronics in the past are all coming together in this device. Like, please, even in the smartphone, it has been an evolution over time, but we're happy, if you remember early days, if somebody tells you can take in your hand a 5-inch or 6-inch device, like that big, you would be laughing. It's like, no, I can't do that. But now we accept it, right? But then just to follow this trend of demand from compute, from size, from power, and counting that all of those are really contradicting. You need to find that balance. So everything comes up from the brains. Everything comes up from that SoC that we're building that will run all these workloads and produce that best visual, that best audio, that best interaction. And of course, there is a lot of more in terms of how far you can go from physics perspective. And there are only certain ways that you can really get to a certain level where it's acceptable, which is you need to harden more things. You need to take functionalities that you would run before in a compute kind of cores and bring it into the hardware. So the way we see evolution of the hardware on our side is more and more dedicated compute for XR workloads, like for a head tracking, for a hand tracking. Not enough anymore just to put them in a CPU or a GPU or a DSP like we've done before, or how we've done it even in the phone today. So is going to drive, really bring in higher performance at lower power. People want more, but they want even more with lower power, which is the biggest challenge that we've been dealing with. So, and this is going to be different dependent on what form factor I'm after. Am I talking about mixed reality or VR device? Or am I talking about a smart glass like this, something that I'm going to wear all the time? It's not episodical. It's not something that I will wear for a couple of hours and put it down. So, and those are really driving the requirements in different directions. And that's why you see a pretty diverse portfolio of SoCs trying to address each of those, I would say, tiers in its own, I would say, requirements.
But you actually have a core XR processor at the moment, right? Tell everybody the name of that particular processor, because it's in the media a lot.
Right. So we do have actually multiple processors. There are two main type of processors that you will find in our roadmap today. Some that we call XR2 or XR1 or XR2 Gen 2, which is the latest, by the way, XR2 Plus Gen 2. All of those are targeting applications where you have to drive higher display resolutions, like up to 4K by 4K per eye, for example, which means you need a much more rendering capability locally, right? Compare that to what we call AR platforms, like AR1, AR2, that would go into a much smaller form factor, and you don't expect to do all the rendering, all the processing locally, but what you do is the minimum possible to guarantee a good experience. So we do have this two-tiering in terms of roadmap where we're trying really to, again, XR roadmap for VR, MR, and even all-in-one AR, and then you have for smaller form factor glasses that we're building. Again, even the size, when you look into the chips, they are designed to fit into a temple. They're not designed to fit into a much bigger space.
Yeah, and I've studied this across the industry for quite a while. Qualcomm's role is really important, and so many of these things couldn't have come to market if it was not for Qualcomm's investment and innovation to make these happen. I'm going to go over to Jason. Now, Jason is over at Lenovo. I've had the privilege of being involved with Lenovo for a long time and know the company pretty well. When they started getting into the VR side of the business, they approached me and asked me to take a look at some of the things that they were doing. And I was very impressed because, well, VR and a lot of activity in this space was kind of focused on consumer. The reality is most of the work that's being accepted is in enterprise, in the business. The money that's being made in VR applications today, while there is some in gaming and others, sports, for example, and a little bit of entertainment, the real money is in enterprise. Now, Jason's role is to oversee the business for Lenovo with an emphasis on enterprise. So, Jason, I want to know a little bit more about, one, tell me about your products, because you've got a range of them, and then more importantly, what are the enterprises that are actually using them? What do they want in a headset?
That's a great question, Tim. So we do have a pretty diverse product line, and a lot of it is based on the technology that Qualcomm produces, but also working with folks like Vario. And it really does come down to use cases. The enterprise use cases that we're seeing most popular, depending upon the form factor in the device, things like training, collaboration. Those are probably the two largest use cases we're seeing in the industry across XR and the enterprise right now. Because that's where the ROI is. Training people, onboarding people, getting good utility out of those devices. With a small fleet of devices, you could train all of your new employees each month. So there's a lot of utility for those devices. It doesn't require every single person to have one, which is a great thing for organizations now, but is also a bit of a detractor for the industry. What we believe we have to get to is a higher degree of utility per device, so that way there's more use cases for each individual to use, regardless of where they sit in the organization. So that way you can't share every device with all these people. It's going to be a near future where it's going to seem as foreign to share your XR device as it would be to share your work laptop or your work phone. You wouldn't do that because those are very personal to you, and those are things that you have a lot of utility for. So, our product line currently encompasses multiple tiers of products. And we've got our kind of general workhorse in the MR space, the Think Reality VRX. And then on the AR side, form factor like what Saeed is wearing here, the Think Reality A3 is more of an AR glass that can plug it directly into a PC and give you a multiple display setup. Or you could plug it into a phone, and then you could have a more of an all-in-one, all-in-two sort of experience, very strongly tailored towards use cases like remote assist or guided workflows. Then we have the higher end on the design side, the engineering side, and that's where we employ the Vario products. And being in such a diverse compute space at Lenovo, we touch all these different sorts of customer use cases, and it usually starts with that conversation around what they're planning to do with this technology. But we sometimes even have to start even lower than that, because the industry and the enterprise sometimes doesn't understand what is even possible with these things. So a lot of times we're starting with conversations around how are you currently doing your training, or how are your designers currently actually interacting with things. So we see a lot of that fundamental conversation start in, and then we break it down into the use cases that could be possible, the utility they could have with the devices, and then really trying to look at an ROI calculation for them, because it is that money factor you're talking about. If you're going to change from a specific way of training your employees and going into something brand new, that's a pretty big change that the organization would have to go through. But if you can prove that they're saving money, or their employees are safer, or there's a less incidence of injury, all of those things could get put into an ROI calculator, and you could figure out a metric to say, this is going to save your organization money. And then you have to, of course, think of the long-term investment. If you're supplanting an existing way of training, what's that actually mean to that organization? And that's an area I think we see some struggle in the industry. We look at the statistics, we look at the use cases out there, we look at all of these ideas around, oh, it's so much more efficient, it's so much safer, all of these things are great. Why aren't people just jumping up and consuming all these devices and everyone doing it? And I believe there's a really strong case to be made that it's not a matter of technology not being effective enough or the technology not even having high enough utility. It's that you're supplanting an existing way of business that they're doing. So it's this overall change management. If you're currently training your employees with in-classroom training in one facility in Idaho, and all of a sudden you're going to do it through virtual reality, that whole system within your organization is going to have to get supplanted and flipped over. So that's a big ask. And usually within organizations, you have a structure of people that fall in initially with the champions of XR, people that really do believe in it. And then usually that kind of silo around them of people that are advocates for it. They understand that the technology is useful, and they're seeing some of the benefits it can get, but they're starting to pick at some of the corners, like, all right, well, it's going to be a big change, or it's expensive, or whatever it may be, with the development time. But usually you can pull those people together, and you can make a good case for it. But really where it hits is the financial teams, or the people that actually have to get their jobs upturned because of it. So you have the people that are a little more apathetic, and they don't want to do the change because it's a difficult thing for organizations to wholesale do that. Now, if you're a brand new organization and you're starting out training people and you have a lot of turnover in employees, think of like the quick service restaurant industry. So we see a lot of utility there. Quick service restaurant industry has 150% annual turnover. So if they have 10,000 employees, they have to hire 15,000 employees each year just to keep everything at baseline. That's a lot of training that they have to do. And with that much turnover, you're having training every week. You're having training constantly. That means you have to take somebody off the line to actually help them train that. If you don't train them appropriately, you have a lot of errors. Customer satisfaction goes down, cost and waste go up. All of those things are dramatically impacted. So seeing a lot of utility in that, the organizations are saying, yeah, absolutely, we'll jump on that. But if you're going from square one, where you've never done anything before, it's super logical to start with XR. If you have a system in place and you're a legacy company, even like Lenovo or Qualcomm, there's a lot of change that has to go in place, and that's usually where that friction point hits. So we try and look at a holistic view of the industry when we're building out and kind of coaching customers through this. That's why we have multiple products in the portfolio, and some of our roadmap, you may have heard a recent announcement that we've done with Meta. We're looking at how we can work more collaboratively across the industry and work around the parts and the soft parts around the box. So we provide a box with a good in it. Here's your headset. That's not going to actually give you a workable solution for enterprise. So we have to look at software as the solutions, the management, the warranty, the way it's actually going to be serviced if something does go wrong. But then all of those other areas around, well, how are we going to get this to you so that way it's not something that you have to assemble yourselves? We're not handing this off to full technology professionals. We're usually handing it off to a human resource team or a training team. So we like to say, we want to provide a fully baked cake. Here's the whole thing. We're not giving you all the ingredients to assemble yourself. Here's the whole thing. And that's an area that Lenovo has specialized in for many years. If you look at your corporate, provided laptop that you may get from Lenovo, it comes with your custom software on it. It comes with an identity already associated with your organization. Those are areas that IT and enterprise expect to have handed to them. It can't come in this hobby kit sort of way, right? It has to come fully prepared. So, those are just some of the areas that we're looking at, and obviously, we're looking to grow our collaboration across the industry and really provide that enterprise maturity that Lenovo's known for.
So I wanted to stay on that a minute before I move to Anna. You mentioned multiple times training as a key enterprise solution for XR. Mm-hmm. Are there cases where virtual reality or a 2D version of training could be done in the metaverse? That not everything has to be VR. Some of it could also be 2D, where it could be scoped out for that has a character that's teaching it that's not the actual physical character or a representative. We've been encountering this a lot in some of our projects, where because enterprises are saying, do I need VR for all of my training? Because every module we have to do be a VR module Or could I use some of the lower level stuff? Because they want to run it on every PC, on every,
Sure.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the majority of VR content, XR content as a whole right now is run on real-time engines or real-time game engines, so primarily with Unity, Unreal. Most of those applications that are created can run on 2D panels. So many of the ISVs that we work with very collaboratively, folks like Engage and Tailspin, Cornerstone, they have 2D versions that you could display on a laptop, on a tablet. There's ways of actually having collaborative environments between people in headset and people outside of headset. It doesn't require new invention with those. The game engines that these are all running on have been utilized for years in the 2D space, in the 3D space on 2D screens, right? So important distinction there. But we're seeing a lot more of that crossover where, to your point, sometimes you've got people that have devices and people that don't have devices. So that collaboration that's possible between those two worlds is absolutely something we're seeing already used. Important distinction and something that you mentioned about like the host aspect is another area of major growth we're seeing within the XR spaces around generative AI. So everything from creating the content itself, but also the ability to assign personas to characters, to assign a persona to a trainer, rather than having to sit there and create the full branching path of how you would train somebody within XR. And you answer one of 3 questions and you get one of 2 responses. The way it's been done in the past is a designer, programmer, voice talent, everyone else would have to come together and create each one of those pieces. And that takes a lot of effort, a lot of time. And they're trying to describe the entire scenario about what you could do in a training situation. Now we could take generative AI and using natural language processing, we give a persona to that character. And that character can now answer any question associated with the topic in real time, giving extremely personalized training, extremely personalized education to every individual. So there's going to be a lot of that growing, continual, but it's all going to happen through the real-time game engines, and that can be displayed in 2D or in that more immersive space in XR.
Okay. Now, Anna, Vario's been doing enterprise-based, high-level products in your headsets, and I've had a chance to use them on multiple years, so I've seen the evolution of it. What is your major enterprise focus now, and what are your enterprise customers asking you for?
Thank you. We are a Finnish company based in Helsinki and have been in this business since 2016. We are now on our 4th generation of headsets, so I've also seen this technology mature over this course of years. And from the very beginning, the journey began with a resolution revolution. That was what we were saying, that we wanted to bring the human eye resolution capability to VR. First, it was VR headsets, and we've been bringing then mixed reality along that over the years. And with our latest product now that we have just recently announced, the XR4 series, we are now first time introducing a parity in virtual and real-world content. We are using video pass-through for the mixed reality. And now we are introducing an autofocus camera, which is real-time focusing on the distances where you're looking at. And this allows us to push the pixels to the resolution that can match human eye also on the pass-through. So this is quite revolutionary. Again, a revolution from Vario. Yeah. And we have been focusing all the time on the highest end of the sector, on the most demanding use cases, most demanding requirements from our customers, and definitely being on the enterprise focus. I could give a few very concrete examples of some of the use cases that our customers today are doing with our headsets, and I think Jason was already bringing the training. That is one of the strongest sectors also for Vario. We have, for example, been now first time in the world certified for pilot training in Europe and seeking certifications also in the US. And in aviation, this means that pilots for helicopter training can now record official flight hours from simulator training. And this is huge for the industry because XR simulators become part of the official training program. In addition to civil aviation, we are also working with defense sector, and there we are, for example, partnering with U.S. Army's air program, where we have helicopter pilots for Apache, Chinook, training also with our headsets to learn this equipment. Defense sector overall is a very topical area today, and we are seeing a huge increase in use cases across that sector today. And these devices really allow to practice even the more dangerous scenarios and simulate scenarios that would be very difficult to arrange in the real world. Another example is automotive, where we have been strong for a long time and continue to be one of our focus areas. We are working with electric car manufacturer Rivian, who are digitizing their design process and bringing mixed reality. And they also have very ambitious targets for zero emission by 2040. And that's where they are also very conscious of waste. And Rivian have replaced the design process with physical clay models, replacing them now with mixed reality, which is alone in savings in materials. They are calculating that they are saving $1 million per vehicle program just from the materials that they don't have to anymore create the physical prototypes. And also their teams, which are globally distributed, are able to review, collaborate, and design together regardless of location, which they say have allowed them to do 2 to 3 times more iteration on design because of mixed reality. These are great examples, and I think even though the topic of this panel is the future of XR headsets, I think one of my main points is that this is not something coming in the future. This is very real to our customers already today, and we are seeing concrete benefit, concrete savings in their processes when they are changing old systems, old ways of working to digital and mixed reality.
Very good.
And there's I think there's an important distinction there. What Said was talking about earlier, the balancing act with everything you're doing between pushing resolution, the poly count that you could have on your experiences, and to be able to keep your frame rate acceptable, the overall latency of the device, but then everything from weight, battery, heat, all those other factors. Then the extreme other side of it on the Vario side, where all that's offloaded to the actual PC, right? So you have it tethered to a PC, and that gives you all that robust power. They are like undefeated kings on resolution and being able to push this amazing visual quality. But that's where the industry has to figure out that divide, right? We have to be able to bring that PC power to that headset while remaining, hopefully, in an all-in-one form factor that can not have to have a tether to a PC, that can be able to do that. So I think that's really where we're going to see the industry grow, is there's still going to be a need for the processor on device, but the processor is going to be doing more of a encode decode from a edge compute or potentially even cloud compute to then actually push it directly into the headset. And when we bridge that, we'll be able to have the massive power that's in a GPU on a local PC side and push it into high resolution displays. The other things that they're doing, again, lots of power consumption. If you try and put that into a display, that would also have to have a battery. All of those other things drive so much heat and in such a small space. Everything from the ventilation and just the issues you'd have from a frame rate perspective would dramatically reduce the experience. So we have to get past that gap, and I think that's part of our overall challenge as an industry, is figuring out how we make sure that we can offload that processing power, get it into a headset, but keep that loop under that 20 millisecond sweet spot, to make sure that we all have good experiences and no one, feels bad while using the devices. So I think there's a very clear line where we're in the all-in-one world where that's where people want to live, but to get the quality of being able to do pilot training, I mean, something as intense as that is going to require that offline GPU that we currently can't get into the headset.
Yeah. I could still add to the question that you asked Jason before. before about the 2D displays and whether mixed reality is important. I was thinking we are going for the most immersive feeling, where you really feel real life as if you were in the airplane or the training situation in real. And I think there's place for many different devices. If it's just learning the information or getting familiar with the training or the environment, you could probably very well do with more low fidelity devices. But when we go to the immersive mixed reality, where it really feels real, we are getting to a different level of learning. When you are kind of learning muscle memory, you are getting the feel how it feels to fly. And this is something, this kind of an emotional response to training that you can never learn from books or looking at a monitor screen.
Yeah. Very good. On this particular topic of enterprises, my partner and I, Barton Goldenberg, have been working on, and we've created a site, and this is good for you to write down. It was supposed to be on my slide, but for some reason it isn't. It's called the Metaverse Resource Center, and you can find it at ismguide.com. We have categorized or listed over 200 case studies of enterprises that are using it today. And when Barton and I started this project, we were shocked at how many businesses and enterprises had been doing this as early as 2016. That they have got the idea that this needed to be a part of their business. And in discussions we've had with some of the enterprises, especially the ones that are really aggressive on this, their position and what they've been telling us is that, one, we want to take a leadership role in our industry, and we're investing in XR and the metaverse to take a leadership position. And then they say something really interesting. They say, if you're not in doing a project in the metaverse now, you're going to be left behind. And it's staggering to us. And by the way, we break it down where these projects are in medical, in manufacturing, in field service, in I think it's got 7 categories if I'm not mistaken. But I encourage you to go to that site just to see what others are doing. It's one thing to be able to tell what you guys are emphasizing here, but when you actually see how the Mayo Clinic's using it, how Mercedes-Benz is using it, it's amazing. We also do a podcast called Business Success in the Virtual World, that in those we actually talk about the actual how Mercedes is doing it and things of that nature. Anyway, I just wanted to make that as a resource for you because it's an important one to help you even get a deeper understanding of how the enterprises are already jumping on the bandwagon. One thing I didn't mention in the beginning, we had actually invited Meta to be on the panel, and Young Lee, who's a friend, and I invited, got rerouted to Asia this week, and so he could not be with us. So I'm turning to Saeed here to talk a little bit, because you guys have partnered with Meta from the beginning, and I don't want you to disclose any future stuff. But I'd be interested in your thinking about Meta's evolution since you guys started working with them.
Yeah, no, I think the collaboration with Meta has been really amazing, and it changed the industry. We want it or not, it did change the industry. And the evolution of devices has seen really, first of all, it just going from, I'm going to have something like just a 3DOF just for entertainment, etc. And that turned out it wasn't enough for everything. And this is counting, of course, Meta's biggest share of the market is consumer. Their focus is consumer. A lot of focus on social. And the Meta has been driving not only from the hardware perspective and finding that sweet spot between what you want as a form factor, what you want as a feature set, at the price point, all of that, but also from a content perspective. They've really, I think it's no secret that how much money is being spent behind this market from Meta to create a lot of content, and also not only from gaming, is trying to expand from gaming to other areas, but again, entertainment is just one of them, but even education and other use cases that, to your point, it's very surprising when you start surveying when their device is being used at. Even ideas that might not come into our mind. And that's really the rewarding part, that many enterprises, actually, they bought a bulk of devices, they deployed it for specific use cases, and other, just the consumer, one, it did give a lot of teaching, a lot of education. What is XR? People didn't know what is XR until recently. I mean, if you want to try this, when you get in the plane, turn to the person next to you and ask them, do you know XR? Do you know VR? Yeah, I heard about it, right? So there is still a huge gap in education, and Meta has been doing a lot of that education, and there is still a ton more to do. And I think they will continue driving this moving forward, looking into both feature set, how do we get into that really sweet spot in terms of performance versus usability versus accessibility to the widest, I would say, population, and also making sure that we're advancing the technology forward.
Yeah, I think when I look at, and I've followed Meta for quite a while in this area, their closed unit, Quest 1 and Quest 2, was really focused on the metaverse and the XR type strategy. But in the Quest 3, when they put the pass-through in, so it bridges a little bit of AR. And I was talking to some of the developers here at the event, and they were saying that that was a game changer for them to be able to do business applications, because the pass-through gave them the opportunity to mix, basically a mixed reality headset. Instead of just VR, it included a little bit of AR. It was not AR in the traditional sense that you and I might think about it, but it allowed them to do business applications, including things like field service and design, where they actually could see what they were doing, and they have the hand structures. And I think that's very important. I think that in the industry, and by the way, Apple did the same thing with the Apple headset, where, and you know, I continue to marvel as I play with the Vision Pro, because I'm seeing everything around me, and yet I'm getting all of the effects of the VR process, right? Tell me a little about your own thinking about that in the sense of your VR headsets. The marriage of VR and AR, where is that today?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things on that. So obviously our first party product, the Think Reality VRX, has mixed reality pass-through. It's good quality mixed reality pass-through. Then you have, on the extreme level, the XR4 from Vario has amazingly beautiful pass-through. The AVP has done a great job with that. As you mentioned, it's kind of the merging of AR and VR. And I think it gives you a strong idea of where our eventual AR future will go. Right? Now, one of the biggest detractors of traditional AR has been around field of view. Very small field of view. You don't feel nearly as immersed or connected to your content. And then usually on the smaller form factor devices, you don't have the ability to put as heavy a battery, as many sensors, many cameras that are going to be able to track your environment and keep it as steady as it would with a VR headset. So VR's device type even has advantages just because of the way they're created. The physicality of them give you the ability to put more sensors, be able to track the environment a little bit better and keep your overall image more stable. So something like our headset or the AVP or the Quest 3 or Quest Pro, all these devices that have mixed reality pass-through in there are giving you this idea of where we could eventually get with AR devices, because it expands your field of view, it gives you that much more rich interaction point, and everything stays much more stable. But the challenge with that is, and the reason why we're still seeing resistance with MR in traditional AR use cases like remote assist, things of that nature, is because you are still having a screen obstructing your face. You could have more of an open-ended design like the Quest Pro had, where you could see downwards. But even with that, if you're walking around and for any electronic reason whatsoever your power goes out, you are ostensibly blindfolded. So it's not going to be usable fully in many of these environments. AVP has further challenges in that space because it has a cable to it. Any of those things, when you start taking to an intrinsically dangerous environment, where there's machinery, or you don't want somebody putting this on and diagnosing a machine, and then the machine turns on and they lose a finger, right? So you have to be very conscientious of where these things are going to be utilized. And you mentioned field surveys. If you're walking outside and again, the screen doesn't function the way it should for a split second, there could be injury. And pretty much everybody we've spoken to on the enterprise side see MR as something that works great if it's going to be in a stationary environment or a safe space, that they're not actually interacting with full-scale large objects or in full locomotion. And I think even most of the organizations that have these devices, they do warn you. They say careful of your surroundings. Make sure you understand exactly what you're going to. That's why we have even the Guardian system set up on all our XR devices. It's to protect the end user. So I don't think MR is going to supplant the idea of AR down the road, but it's giving us a vision of where it can go through the enhanced field of view, the better, more stable visuals that you get out of it, as well as the ability to actually really immerse people with the content.
Are you seeing the same thing? I mean, you bring up a really great point here, is that we're kind of seeing an evolution of where we're heading. And the question, of course, is the future of XR headsets. It is including some of the AR features that make that capable. And then you're talking a little bit about the pitfalls of it. But are you seeing that from your customers too, in the sense of what they're asking in the way of design?
Yeah, I think the challenge again in this industry, there is now one form factor fit every use case. Every use case has a different requirement. That's why when you look at our portfolio of devices launched based just on Snapdragon XR platform, it's more than 80 devices. How many did you hear about? Maybe 4, maybe 5. That's what you heard. Where are the others? Where are they going? And why do we need 80 devices? It's because, again, of those challenges to meet every use case within one device. What happens is people build purpose-built devices for purpose use cases. And hence, when you build a device for medical, it's different if I'm building it for a designer, an engineer that sits on a desk and wants just to design 3D objects and whatnot, versus I want to walk around as a field worker. You cannot be walking with even mixed reality comes with a lot of challenges. If you want it as good, and I think Vario would testify to that, there's a lot of requirements that go into the device itself. It's going to be heavier, it's going to be and then you start hitting all kind of issues with the battery, etc. So there is no one device, and then we talk about mixed reality, for example, and it's going to work on every use case with ER. But what mixed reality is, in our view, it's a natural evolution of where we were in XR. If you look at XR, if I look at consumer, it started with gaming. And today, even if you have an MR design, most of the gamers would go into VR mode. But what happens as gamers are becoming more social, people want to be more present in their environment, because when they want to spend more time in their device, well, mixed reality is required. There is mixed reality just because I want to see outside, or I want to interact with digital objects, which adds another complexity and into everything else. It's just like the moment you start mixing that. But what mixed reality is solving is another problem, which is for ER to work really augmented reality. With optical see-through, you need a much wider field of view, right, to make it really very useful. And when you look today at the technologies of the optics and display, you might have it, but the quality is not there.
Yeah.
The color conformity, how does it compare the digital item to the real item? It's not there. Camera gives you that. The black is black, because you're seeing the entire world behind the lenses of a camera. So pretty much you would not see a difference between a digital item that is rendered versus a real item, right? So it gives you that consistent experience, but for specific use cases. I don't see us walking with a mixed reality headset walking around. I don't see that happening because of all the problems you mentioned, Jason. And this is where AR is critical. We need to continue moving AR forward, optical see-through forward as well. Yeah, we're now devices like up to 70-degree FOV, very expensive, not as much affordable, but guess what? It's evolving and it's getting there. In the meantime, mixed reality is the solution, if somebody wants that wide field of view.
There's an important thing, Saeed mentioned about just the being able to see and interact with the other people that are around you. There's a comfort factor that MR has introduced as well. A lot of people had resistance to putting on VR headsets. That's one of the things I think AVP has done very well, and some of these other products come to market, including the Quest 3. The recent update that they did through their MR pass-through is pretty fantastic. But the comfort factor of being able to see and interact with people and see your environment removes some of that concern that people have when they put on a VR headset when they're blindfolded ostensibly, and being able to just interact with the people around them, see the actual real world, really drives down a little bit of that initial concern that some people might have.
Yeah, you're just missing that one thing. In VR mode, when we didn't have MR, you can hit somebody. That was okay. And you say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Now you don't have any excuse, right? So that's the only
We're going to have less YouTube videos of people running into walls as well.
Right.
So Anna, in that same context, have some of your customers asked a little more about MR-type solutions, or is the focus from you guys is still really VR-focused because of the enterprise demands?
We are definitely mixed reality, and we see that in any use case, your capability to have the virtual world, the virtual environment, for example, where you train, but bring in your physical instruments, your tools, even seeing your eyes feeling immersed. And these are one of the things that are super important, so that, for example, your training scenario might include paper notes, if you have physical dials or buttons you need to read and press. So in a way, this is how we mix and match, so that you get the pilot might have the dash with all the physical gadgets, but then you have the virtual window showing where you are flying. So this is definitely our angle, and a majority of our cases we are building together are utilizing the mixed capability in many ways, masking, creating chroma key environments, like super interesting scenarios, integrating real and virtual and making them feel like they blend together seamlessly.
Good. So we've talked especially about enterprise. And the question about that we have in front of us is the future of XR headsets and how will they deliver our spatial future. Enterprises, I think, are getting the message, and I think they're obviously going to lead the role. And you kind of talked a little bit about with the MR evolution, but is there an opportunity down the road for consumers beyond things like gaming and sports? I've had a lot of time with the Apple Vision Pro, and I've seen one or two concerts on it, as well as a lot of demos. And it's fascinating to me to be sitting on the sidelines of a baseball game where you're watching it from literally in the first base line, or you're in the NBA and you're doing that. And I have no doubt in my mind that we're going to see some amazing sports and even entertainment. But that may still be a select audience, right? A custom audience. And again, at 3,500, it's a big issue. How do you think Apple is going to influence this? And more importantly, how does it influence their competitors?
Well, I think if you look at what we're calling even this conference and talking about spatial, right? As an industry, we've been referring to it as AR, VR, XR. Now we're referring to it as spatial, right? And part of that's because of Apple's influence. They said they're coming out with a spatial compute device. When you look at it, it's a mixed reality headset. It's a VR headset primarily, has mixed reality pass-through. It's in this realm of spatial computing. I think their introduction into the market obviously has helped grow awareness. Also, the comfort factor of being able to see the real world through that pass-through and the quality of that has convinced people of the potential. The comfort factor alone is a challenge because it's a heavier device than the external battery. But those aspects, again, are part of that technology treadmill that we'll all run along. And in the history of human design, technology is undefeated, right? We always solve the problems eventually. It may not be today or tomorrow, but we get there, right? So they have shown people the possibility there. But I think you're bringing up some good points, Tim, about what else can we use these devices for? And this idea of spatial computing is where we want to go collectively as an industry. But computing is a high utility situation. Your laptop is your computer that you use. You do everything on it. Your phone, you got everything, all of your apps, your music, your photos. You send your emails. You do your work. We're not yet at that point with XR headsets, but that's another area I think they're doing well, and we're going to see continual growth in. Is that when you jump into your device, you're going to have multiple things you can do with it. Rather than just go into a singular application and come back out, you'll go and you'll spend time on there. And we're seeing people utilize these devices today to put up multiple screens and then to pull out 3D objects from that space. If you haven't tried it, if you have tried the AVP, there's a website that you can go to called beautifulthings.xyz. And that to me is the vision of the future of the internet, because you can go on that site and you can pull out these amazing 3D objects and spatially anchor them anywhere in your space. They react to the light in your environment. The reflections are accurate. It feels like they're in the space with you. And you could see that future where you're going to be able to decorate your virtual space. You're going to put on your headset and your home is going to become this enhanced version of your home. All of those anchors that you previously were using, all of the screens that you'd want to have. The view outside your window can change. If you don't like the weather today, you put on your headset, it's gorgeous San Diego day. We've got the ability to do that with this technology. But it is, again, just part of that treadmill factor. But the graduation of this, to get to actual spatial computing, does require us to train people how to utilize it in ways they're already familiar with. Again, an area that some of these companies are doing really well. They're taking the common language that we already know. Again, Apple, did this great. They took the common language of iOS and they graduated into the headset. You didn't have to tell people what those icons meant. They already knew. So that sort of training wheel effect and that kind of bring up for the industry and bring up for the general populace, the people that aren't at a conference like AWE and don't understand this technology the way the people in this room do, is a necessary part of growing the industry. Like, we have to start with something that's going to allow them to grow up and have utility on the device that they're already familiar with.
Saeed?
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of things there. I think, first of all, Apple coming into this market is a very, very positive to this industry, because all our aim is how do we grow the pie? How do we make it big enough for every player to come in? The second thing is, I want to say that they don't have a choice. Nobody has a choice but to join, because this will happen. People, if they stay behind, it's like the smartphone. People that said, hey, I don't want to do it. I want to stay with a feature phone. What happened to them? They stayed behind. Same thing for the watches. Same thing. This is a transformation. You just either get on the train or you stay behind. So everybody has. I didn't think that they did have a choice, right? So I think this market needs everybody, every hand. We're not at the point anymore where we are almost, I would say, a hammer that is looking for a nail. No, the nail is defined, the hammer is here. You just pick it up or leave.
Okay. Anna, we got about a minute left.
Yeah, I wanted to address something that Jason very briefly said about why are we so attached to our mobile phones, our laptops, and that's where our content is. And today still, it is quite difficult to get the mixed reality content. You need programming skills, you need special tools. And we have just this week announced one angle to that direction, that we want to engage users to try digitizing content on a consumer-grade devices, scanning with phones, and turning a real world into a digital 3D world for sharing, collaborating together. This is called Teleport by Vario, and it is open today for everybody to try out. It is a technology preview, but this is something that I think we are still looking for, that killer app in XR. So what is the way for anybody of us to become content creators, share and collaborate together without professional tools? And I think this is something that will drive adoption of XR, so that more and more people can have that addictive content content in their own devices and wanting to get back to you, not just as a professional tool, but anybody of us also on our private lives.
And what will help in that is AI.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we didn't have a chance to get into the role of AI in our spatial future. That has been covered by other sessions. But let me just thank each of you for being here. I really appreciate it, and I think our audience appreciates you guys attending. We are at, as you point out, we're at the cusp of, I think, an amazing transformation of every aspect of our digital life. And this is going to be at the center of it. AI, I think, is going to be an underlying technology that drives it, but I think what we're seeing with XR and spatial computing is going to be the driver of delivering the next way we actually interact with information. Thank you again. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.